It's 2 years of the Tinubu administration. There's been a lot of talk around it online. I even did my own personal opinion on my money brief. Yeah, but
Guys,
I mean, so it's almost like we're bringing buy sell hold early. So I want us to sort of analyze 2 years from a buy sell hold perspective, and so I'm going to go around everyone, starting of course on my right, because traditionally we like to start on our right. So from Tunji, and the way I want us to discuss this is you're just going to mention one thing you're buying, one thing you're selling, and one thing you're holding, and then we can all have
About the administration.
opinions. Yeah, about the administration. What about the last 2 years? 2 years only. Remember, it's 2 years, so you got to be objective.
You should have told us this before now.
Nah, that's the idea. I want
put them on the spot.
I want it to come
I
from
like
the gut.
it.
Come from the guts.
Yeah, let it come from the gut. So the only thing is that Sam has a lot more time to think. Yeah. So, but you also have a lot more time to think about your response as well, because you tell us what you're buying, what you're selling, what you're holding, and then if you have counters, you can counter. So let's start with what you're selling.
Ooh.
What I'm selling?
Yeah. 2 years of Tinubu administration.
The ability for this government to sell itself. I think they've done a rather poor job in terms of, I think even the Buhari administration, which really didn't have a lot of wins, sold itself a lot more.
You think so?
It didn't have a lot of wins, but it did a lot of. They did a lot of.
I thought this was an administration that was very, very like.
No. So understand what I understand.
He's saying sell itself. Though.
Sell itself.
They put the headlines out, no?
No. As in, when I'm, it is so. If you want to talk about somebody that's selling themselves, is Donald Trump.
Okay,
imagine how Donald Trump sells even what is obviously not true.
You know that when you try and
says
sell
they
your
shop in a very
I think you need to sell yourself with credibility. I'm not confident Donald Trump is selling himself with credibility. That's
what I mean. But I think this government has enough wins to be able to sell itself. It just always feels like, they feel there will be backlash, so they rather wait. So I feel they need to do a lot more selling so that people can be able to buy into it a lot more, because there are a lot of skeptics. I was one of them. So I would sell the fact that they've not sold themselves.
Any response to that? Agree or disagree?
To sell itself?
Yeah.
I disagree. I disagree. Yeah. I mean, I think that the headlines have been positive to the point that obviously the Moody's upgrade is not a headline, but it's just, I think the headlines, I think Nigeria's had
government to sell itself.
He's saying the government is not selling itself.
Government.
Like selling some of its successes better.
Sell it. How
So I give you an example. I was at a session and somebody was saying that, look, Nigeria, Africa, particularly Nigeria, doesn't have any strategy around promoting maybe Buy Nigeria or Proudly African, as we used to call it before, like something that sort of alters the mood, something that shows that there is a change, there's a wave, So what we do see is maybe the CBN governor or Minister of Finance going out and meeting investors directly, but from a communication perspective, aside maybe engaging people on social media, you're probably not seeing anything constructive that is, keen into projecting Nigeria.
But don't they
whether you're trying to project sectors, you're trying to project. I'll give you an example. If you're watching Arsenal play, you see, the biggest club in the world. You see Rwanda on his jersey. Arsenal's the biggest club in the world. Yeah. So you see, you see
like
Rwanda.
PR.
Yeah. Because I mean,
I guess we don't.
Yeah, so something like that. I don't know. Is that what you're?
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Because there's been enough wins for us to do that. There's been enough wins in the CBN and monetary policy for us to not brag, but at least we've not done badly. That kind of.
So it's kind of image marketing.
Yeah. So
image laundering.
So for instance, like the launch of the portion of the Lagos Calabar Coastal Road was done as a launch. And I like launches. I mean, that's fantastic. But I feel we would have spent less money to do a lot more image marketing to the fact that we are creating and opening up Nigeria for economic
I don't know
activity.
if that launch was a good example, though. But
Yeah, I know. I think because we haven't gone to the hold and buy, so I have a lot of things to say.
let's go to your buy. Let's go to your buy because there's no time. Let's go to your buy.
So my buy is the fact that, we are seeing some structural improvements. I like the Lagos Calabar Road construction. I like the idea. I like the fact that the CBN has been given the ability to, or at least given the opportunity to be, to some extent, independent and to do monetary policy as monetary policy should be done. Then you look at pockets here and there within the government, you find some levels of competence here and there which speak to a direction. I like that. Going back to the earlier part is that it would have been great if there was a narrative driving, connecting everything together so that we see it as one story instead of the CBN is doing this guy is doing this, we're doing road here. It's tied into one story. So yes, I'm buying the fact that there are a few things that, that look like positive trajectory with this government. So yeah.
What are you holding?
What I'm holding is... So when the president came into office, or before the president came into office, I've always assumed that he had a larger than life persona in terms of the fact that I just kind of felt I was going to get a lot more sound bites of leadership from him. He just seems like he wants to be the guy walking in the background doing all the moves.
Really?
Yeah. Doesn't it feel like that to you?
Video
with 65 cars in his convoy.
Exactly.
Everybody
basically bowing down to shake him and all that.
So that's the thing. So
wasn't that enough?
So no. So hear what I'm saying.
You had your Senate president singing for him.
So hear what I'm saying. To me, he comes across like the Godfather, right? Which isn't bad for who he is. What I was hoping for was something in the likes of a Lee Kuan Yew. And I do feel he has it somewhere inside him. No, what I mean is, don't get me wrong. I needed...
So, I think the alcohol is kicking in.
No, it's not the alcohol.
Or is it water?
He's a brilliant man, right? He's a brilliant man. And I expect him to speak more to that. I expect him to be more flamboyant with how he speaks.
He never really
Nigeria.
has been that kind of person anyway.
He was when he was governor.
No,
He was a lot younger.
He was young, yeah.
He was much younger then.
So he was when he was governor. So I was expecting a lot of that. But even if he's not the one doing it, somebody within the government needs to be doing it. Do you get? Somebody needs to be actively selling the Nigerian story. Somebody needs to inundate us with this Nigerian story. Let us be so inundated with it that everything we see just merges together. And I think that is what I'm holding. And it's just not giving me the final buy-in yet with the government. I just feel that part is lacking.
All right, Arnold, that sounds like a buy-sellish hold.
Buy-sellish hold. Yeah.
So what are you buying? What are you holding?
What am I? Should I start with selling?
Let's start with selling. What are you selling?
I'm selling the budgets. I think the budget was overly ambitious. It was 2.1 million barrels.
So
oil price 75.
Was it big, ugly bill? Is that how you put it?
Yeah, I just think that I'd love to see the model or the modeler. Like, how did you get some of these numbers? Oil price is oil price. Oil price is hard. Oil price is 75. I mean, the average oil Q1 is 71, so not too off, right? Oil is hard to model. I mean, even for me, oil is hard to model. But other things that were probably in their control, I think they're overly ambitious. So that's a sell for me. A buy is a central bank. Impressive, man. There were times, that I thought that the currency is gone. Otilo. It's gone. And I would have bet everything.
But it's still 1.6 though.
Yeah, but it's impressive. I mean, it's still impressive. Weak dollar environment, crazy global everything, and the Naira's held. Stable-ish. So CBN, man, it's you surprised me. Hold. I really want to see. I know our GDP numbers are fastest in 10 years, right? Projected 3.6, 3.7 by the World Bank. I think that we should do more in the job creation sectors. So we talked about this manufacturing industry, agriculture. Those industry
supply side. Okay.
Yeah, but industry and agriculture are our biggest GDP brackets, right? Together, aren't they?
Services.
No, services on its own,
services,
but manufacturing and
Manufacturing,
together.
yeah,
together.
And agriculture is about 22%.
Yeah.
So together is
Together,
over 50. Services is about 40 something.
If you add them together,
add them together, and those for me are big job creation. So I thought Tinubu was pro labor in the sense of a big jobs guy. But anyway, so that's my hold. I think that we need to do more. And I think that if we do more in manufacturing, in industry, and agriculture, I think things would change drastically on the upside for us.
Any response to Arnold's buy sell? I mean, he's selling the budget. Do you agree with him?
Sell the budget.
Yeah, I'll speak to that when it's my turn. But the priority has been macroeconomic stabilization.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to talk about high level of investment intensity when you're trying to stabilize your macro. So it's not surprising that manufacturing have suffered. It's not surprising that agriculture has suffered as a consequence. The question is now that you've sort of achieved or semblance of stability is coming. What is the next leg, right? It's about sequencing.
Yeah.
So I think the first leg of sequencing I've been happy with. I think what is going to make me have a structurally positive view of Nigeria is how they sort out the supply side factors that have held us back for decades. And what do I mean? It means connecting the road infrastructure, connecting urban rural agricultural centers to economic centers, ports, rail networks, sorting out energy.
Security,
like I said earlier, economic growth is energy transformed, right? Which is why I'm a little bit skeptical about having global cost reflexive electricity prices. You retard yourself. You need to figure out what portion of the electrical value chain you want to subsidize in a way that the cost of subsidy is manageable, targeted, predictable.
A lot of people are going to argue against
Nigeria needs.
So how do you
needs cheap electricity?
Yeah, but how do you attract the investment?
So this is what I think. I'm speaking.
We've done cheap electricity for decades.
I'm speaking from a position of relatively little knowledge. I'll caveat with that, but I'll say something. The issue with electricity, from what I understand, the value chain is broken, right? So for Nigeria as a country, right, we have enough gas to generate the electricity that we need, right? There are ways you can create a gas infrastructure and gas market that basically underwrites your entire electricity industry in a way that gas input is subsidized. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when that happens, you can allow the rest of the free market happen on top of it. But once your input is much lower than market and the subsidy
Interesting
is there,
thing is that exists.
you can.
Yeah.
But the problem that we have now is that the current gas pricing we have doesn't allow for the investment in capacity that then flows through the chain. So I think we need to figure out how to marry a subsidized input cost, right? I mean, why is China China? China is China because it's figured out how to make energy cheap and affordable. It's figured out how to make capital cheap and affordable. And it's figured out how to make people cheap and affordable. You combine those three together, you have economic growth.
I guess the missing link for me, especially when you try to compare China with Nigeria, is local capacity. So I think local capacity to actually do this thing. So
China
in
built
China,
the capacity.
exactly.
When
In China, they can build their own power plants. They can make their own meters.
Yeah, I know what you mean
They
now,
can build their own power lines. We can't do that. So we're still running to Siemens and to Germany to try and do these things for us.
Intelligent
I don't know. Maybe.
No. So
they have these capacities. They can't do it.
They are just intentional.
They can't do it.
There was a time.
Yes.
At the time when I was growing up, we had local industrial champions. We had local companies that would build roads. Some of the industrial business, even the shoes I used to wear when I used to go to school,
were made
all
here.
made by local people.
Yeah.
We lost that industrial capacity as a result of bad policy, right? And it's very difficult to gain back, but we can if we're intentional.
That's what I'm saying. It's just
about
going to take a while.
It will take a while.
It's gonna
I
take a
agree.
while.
but it needs to start now.
So, funny enough, it appears Arnold is aligned with this big ugly bill because I remember one of the very first episodes of Drinks and Mics Tunji did mention that
Yeah.
Tinubu had to go big or go home.
Yeah, and he went big, and now he has to go home.
Do you think?
I don't think he's going
So
home.
that's the thing. So with the budget,
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why you have a problem with it is that the budget in itself isn't an issue, because you were saying that you had to dig into the numbers a bit more.
Yeah.
You know, and that is the right way to look at it, which is why I was talking about, you know, him really being front and center of the narrative. You know, a lot of these things tie into what we want to do. So if it is clear to all of us, it is now a case of how do we look for the money, Abi? You know, those are contexts to. I don't think the budget in itself is outlandish. It is the revenue part that is the problem, right?
Yeah.
So what is going to get us the revenue? Certain amount
But
of
somebody
production.
said recently that, you know, in the budget they were going to do how many street lights again? I said that.
Those street lights thing,
How many solar streets?
No, but those see. I don't like when Nigerians are sensational about those things. We've been seeing things like that in the Nigerian budget from when
Even
I started.
spoons,
Does it make it right?
No, it doesn't make it right. I never said that. What I'm saying is that it has never stopped anything. Right? Let's focus on what is important, because you're not going to change that. You're not going to change that. And those things are even structural. They're not going to change that. I feel that he has a very high ambition for the budget. He wants to do a lot of things. The problem is that budget alienated a lot of people. Because they're like, how? Where now? From which money? You know, that kind of a thing. Meanwhile, these are the people that are supposed to even...
alienated people like who?
So, like, for instance, you.
Okay, as in we don't get it.
We don't get it. So it's like,
yeah.
and these are part of the people that are supposed to bring part of the money. Do you get? And you're supposed to get that
to make
buy-in
sense.
before
Yeah,
time.
it's supposed
So
to make sense.
I think again, I still go back to that. He needs to, or he or somebody needs to sell this thing.
And
more.
it feels like borrowing and more borrowing was always the plan underneath the table. Like they knew there would be a supplementary budget.
See,
They'd have to
I
increase
think that is
the debt
something
profile,
that
and
he
nobody
didn't
spoke
need to
about
tell us.
We always knew that borrowing and
That's-
more borrowing was the plan.
He's never. If you've ever asked him about borrowing, he's never been
Yeah, he's never been
the
shy.
guy to say.
No, he
don't
likes
borrow.
credit.
I don't like it. Yeah.
It's what credit does, right? I mean, we can come to that.
Yeah.
But for
Sam,
me,
buy, sell, hold.
so for me, I would sell the lopsidedness of his appointments.
What do you mean lopsided? What's
A lot of his
Regions.
critical roles have focused on the southwest.
Okay.
And Nigeria is a very weird political construct. And I think that's probably, and there are competent people across the whole country. So I feel like his appointment.
So is this
should
a
have-
party thing though? Because I mean, it was similar as well in the Buhari government.
Yeah,
That's what
well,
I'm
I think
saying.
Buhari I understand in certain critical roles, you want people that you know and you want people that you trust. Well, I think something Obasanjo was able to really do was to pull people from
From
different
all over.
parts of the
Yeah,
country
yeah. You gotta
and
give
get
him
them
credit
on a building project. I don't think Tinubu has thought that is something that he wants to pay particular attention to right now. There's a sense that maybe he just feels that he needs to hit the ground running, get the job done, and then maybe in his second term he might try and address some of those issues. But if anything is going to cost him politically, I think this will be it, in my opinion.
It does look like it does feel that way, that regions are beginning to feel uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
And that might, but again, I've never worried with him with those kind of issues. He looks like he knows how to do those things well.
Yeah, but the problem is that sometimes you never have a problem until you do, right? So obviously, I don't see him losing the elections. I think from a political calculus standpoint and from an election financing standpoint, getting Delta and Port Harcourt are big coups. There's nobody, and obviously corporate Nigeria, given the famine that we've had, don't have the firepower to fund an opposition, right? So from a financial perspective, outside of a popular uprising, right? Which is why I think that it's probably nightmare is somebody like Peter Obi, who might be able to drive a movement without much money, right? But the rest of the old guard, right, that require money to mobilize and stuff, I think is kneecapped all of them. So I don't see that being a threat. It's like if Peter Obi or a variant of a Peter Obi type character. Because remember, Peter Obi mobilized and became the second or the third most votes within 6 months. So if somebody that is probably more and Peter Obi he didn't articulate his vision very well. Right. So if you found somebody that has that kind of mass appeal and has the ability to articulate the vision very well, I think young people are fed up. All right. So I think that's the risk that he faces. But in terms of the core political establishment, I don't think there's any threat that comes from them. That's my opinion. So that's my sell. My hold will be the fiscal side.
You're holding that?
Yes.
We're not prudent enough, or
so I've been really thinking about because I'm always I don't want to attribute performances to incompetence or people don't know what they are doing. We all know, and everybody in all the financial charts that we are all part of is always like, our monetary is doing the heavy lifting. What is happening with fiscal? I think there are institutional limitations around the performance of the fiscal side. And what do I mean by that? There's been a systematic hollowing out of finance capacity in Nigeria. Think about it. When I think about the UK, where I used to live, you had the Treasury, right? And the Chancellor of the Exchequer is the second most important portfolio for a ministerial portfolio. Lives right next to the Prime Minister, controls the Treasury from end to end. The only part of the Treasury it doesn't control is the Bank of England, right, which is independent by statute, right? When I think about our finance ministry, you have FIRS, which is a quasi-independent agency that is outside. You have the budget office, right, which is different. You have DMO, which is separate. You have you even have a Ministry of Planning and Budget Planning or something, Ministry of Planning and Budget. So you've hollowed out the capacity, right, of that industry and these are the departments that in a proper treasury like we have in the US or we have in the UK, those are supposed to be departments that sit underneath the Ministry of Finance,
so that you're able to see it end to end. You know that
so if you can set policy and then allow these people to operate within the policy framework that you set. So now it's not a matter of coordinating. Sometimes you hear that this agency chairman has more power than you, have more access to the president than you, and then there's another part of it that frustrates me, and this is across the whole of Nigeria. In order for anybody to even be effective, you need to actually build a technical team that is outside of the civil service system, right? Which is very, very bad in terms of institutional memory, in terms of professionalism. We don't have a civil servant. So I think, because like I've really thought around about this. I'm like, obviously, Wale Edun was Commissioner of Finance in Lagos. I mean, you can have all the questions and marked about he hasn't done well, etc., etc. But are there institutional limitations or to his capacity to deliver? And my answer is yes. Which is why I didn't put him on his cell, because I feel like those limitations has to be addressed to see how effective he can be. Right? So that's why I put it on the hold instead of a cell. For buy, I have two buys. I think the monetary policy side has been close to outstanding. There are still question marks, and we can talk to that if we have time. And I think the reforms in the oil sector, particularly the management of NNPC, could turn out to be this administration's most enduring legacy.
That's just a recent buy, though.
Yes,
that's like,
well, it started first because remember a lot of reforms were happening, which I think another special advisor Olu was leading, right? So in terms of incentivizing foreign investors to invest in the deep offshore, assets change hands on the local. Like those have now been accelerated. Those assets have now been done. So I think the outlook for the oil industry in terms of oil volume, in terms of trade, is probably the best it's been, right? I think it's not unrealistic that we can achieve those production targets that was set when the NNPC board was appointed. So I think there's a lot of reforms. And I think short term, that's the way you fix the dollar needs that we need to then reinvest in supply side factors to solve some of the issues that Arnold talks about, which is agricultural extension services, agricultural agro-business services. Those are the things that drive productivity, right? Not farming, not Buhari, everybody goes to the farm, right? Because actually, I think if you have a more productive agricultural sector, the labor intensity of that sector falls, right? So somebody else needs to pick up the slack. So you need to put industries alongside your primary industrial agricultural production, right? So I think that's where I feel like he's done well. this NNPC board, this NNPC team, devoid of politicians, right, is one of the best things that I have seen. If these guys can, and this is a dormant asset for us, right? It is insane. Look at what the US did. I said that at the beginning. Between 2007 2008 to 2022, the US basically brought $8 million a day. They created an equivalent of Saudi Arabia in additional oil production. And we are increasingly building the infrastructure. You think about the PIA. The PIA, in terms of moving these OMLs into the PMLs, is very similar to what the US did in the Permian Basin, to allow a lot of independent people to drill the same field and get output, right? So I am quite optimistic with the trajectory of that industry. And I think in terms of lasting reform so far, I was going to say I think I was going to say tax bill, but tax bill hasn't passed yet, so I'll pack that.
I was going to come and say that's
yeah, but I'll pack that.
So that's why you should have allowed us plan, because I was going to say that the work of Taiwan,
monetary policy and oil industry, particularly the professionalization of NNPC, for me will be his enduring legacy.
So you see, those are some of the things I keep saying. There are clusters here and there of good work, right? And this has, to be honest, it could have, the president really could be Humpty Dumpty, and I really don't care. But the point is, if you see structural changes that are going in the right direction, you know. And when you see people, using CBN to plant tomatoes, you know.
Yeah,
you
3
see,
buys.
You see, that's my point. That's my point. I said that at the
You wanted to get, you
beginning,
have more buys.
I have, so the tax reform is
Was that a buy for you?
Is a buy.
Removal of fuel subsidy.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that's another buy.
Yeah, you're talking about reforms now, so that's
So
not a buy.
what about you? You haven't given us
You
your
guys have any disagreement? Are you on board with this buy yourself?
Reforms, monetary policy buy, same thing with me. You are hold on fiscal.
Yeah, hold on, fiscal.
Yeah, which you thought probably should have been a sell.
Yeah.
And I explained why I was hold, right?
Yeah.
Because
Because I'm a sell on fiscal.
That would have been a sell.
I was a sell, but I get that
makes sense.
explanation.
You were. So you were. So you're
And
doing that sell. So you convert it.
I have experience.
I'll put things in context. If you go on the Ministry of Finance website, you can't find any fiscal data.
Yeah.
Up to the point, the finance minister gave a presentation in New York with a revenue number that is markedly different from what the statistical bulletin from the CBN came out.
Correct.
And the scale of difference is so significant. And we are still waiting for the budget office to give us data on 2027 and the second half of 2024 numbers.
Yeah, we still don't have that.
It's a mess.
It's a huge one. And I think they kind of acknowledge that as well.
Yeah.
Sources within the ministry tell me that it's a huge problem that they're trying to solve. In fact, there's a team that has been set up to try and address that problem, harmonize all the data differentials they have within several ministries or several departments on that.
See, I am a local investor.
It's
I have
embarrassing.
time in my hand, right, to go and research these things. I'm struggling to find data.
Yeah.
If you have an analyst in the middle of Utah that says, oh, Nigeria is interesting because I had to a conference call that the Minister of Finance went to, and you go to MBS, you can't get data. You go to Ministry of Finance, you can't get data. And then this little data you get from the presentation that the man gave you, when the CBN released their own bulletin, you find out that data is wrong. I mean, you can't, I mean, it's crazy.
That's why you should visit Nairalytics. We do have a lot of All right, so my own sell. I'm trying not to repeat what you guys have said, but I think the number one sell for me will be rule of law.
Rule of law.
Yeah, I think that is probably among his, because I was checking his 8-point agenda. That's one of the major things. And I think in terms of judiciary, not really sure that they have been of immense help to the government or to Nigeria in general. I think it's been a lot of suspect around rule of law and the role they play in driving investment and protecting property, wealth, and of course, delivering judgment on time. So I think that is one area that maybe perhaps in the second half of his first term or the first 4 years, he probably needs to double down on that. I think rule of law is one area that you do need to get pretty right. And I can also add regulation to that as well. So we've seen a little bit of improvement in regulations here and there, but if you speak to investors, manufacturers, small businesses, they still complain a lot about regulatory bottlenecks, despite some.
So you think regulation needs to be more laxed?
Yes. Across, there's still a lot of multiple taxation here and there. It's still
That's what Taiwan and his team are
It's still
fixing.
difficult exporting out of Nigeria. You still have a lot of issues with port congestion. Nigeria still has a lot of checkpoints across the country, inhibiting movement of goods and services and even people. So, in fact, I can't recall the last time I saw the amount of checkpoints we see now. I don't know if you guys noticed that there are just checkpoints everywhere.
Or police checkpoints.
Yeah, police checkpoints, especially police checkpoints, immigration checkpoints across.
I'm sorry, but I kind of get slightly offended when they stop me. I don't know. I think it's a little bit of entitlement. I get a bit offended.
So
like,
and they stop a lot of young people though.
Yeah, but
it's
see,
incredible.
I'm-
like once they see you on maybe dreadlocks or you're in a stud, you're bound to be stopped. Like
so I'm not sure about that. I don't. I mean, in terms of
I don't
movement of
experience
goods,
it, but-
movement of goods, I understand. But as an individual, actually, I like it because I feel safe.
Yeah, that's one way you can do it.
I
like it.
don't know when they
Yeah.
wind down
I
and
see.
then God give me 200 naira.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing. It's very
That part.
frustrating, right? And then there's also like you can have all these ideas, and this government does have ideas.
Yeah.
But people need to implement those ideas. If you don't have, like, for example, like a friend of mine was imported a car recently, and the process of dealing with custom,
It's just
it's a nightmare.
frustrating.
Like
Frustrating.
even if you are willing, you want to pay the full duty in accordance to the law, right? The process is frustrating.
Yeah.
Right. I'd rather speak to agents than actually speak to
to
you as an individual.
And then even in
Right.
government agencies where they've actually digitize things.
Yeah.
It
They
doesn't
will
work.
still- they will
It's not-
still
I
digitize
have applied for a new driver's license for over a year now. Over a year, yes. All I have is just that piece of paper. And each time I ask, it's Abuja. There's one problem. I don't know if anybody else has that experience.
Yeah, I've had the same issue with
Yeah,
the NIN.
but Abuja, it's Abuja. So
you have a
So you just realize that these are areas where
it's supposed to be.
they claim they've done, they've done a lot of reforms, they've digitized it.
But
Maybe
now
that's why they're
people,
not
now
making
people
noise,
go,
'cause they know it's not working.
now people go run that system, and this is the challenge because you now have, I don't know how you fix a problem like this. It's a very difficult problem to fix.
It's tough.
I don't know whether it's tough or whether
No,
it's
it
just
is because
it
it
is.
is the
No, it is.
entire-
Like, what's
the
so
entire
difficult
civil-
in NIN, in driver's license?
Yeah.
Like, why can't? Like,
me
and
explain.
it's not like it's not like it's a new one. It's a renewal.
It's a
You've
renewal,
given
yeah.
now
Rent is rent. At the end of the day, Ugo, if you are willing to pay the right people, your
But it
license will
shouldn't
come out.
But it shouldn't be the case, though.
No, but this
It
is the
shouldn't- it's
point.
frustrating.
But there's an ecosystem on top of ecosystem on top of ecosystem of rentopreneurs, which is what I call them, right? Whose job is just to frustrate the
cabal
process.
upon
And
cabal.
one of the issues I find is that we've accepted it. It's like, allow him, pay him, allow him. And for me, it's frustrating that
To be honest,
we've
it's
accepted it.
cultural. If I want,
yeah,
if I want,
yeah.
if I want paper to move, anytime I interact with government bureaucracy, I can't go direct.
Yeah, you can.
It's very challenging,
Yeah, it is.
even if you want to.
Even with the CAC that is digitized, it's
Yeah.
So it's turned to the point where you have to have a guy for everything.
So this is the
You
problem.
have to have
So
a
if you don't
guy.
have a guy,
If you don't have a
Yeah.
guy,
Then things
and
can
all
move.
the things you said, there are guys who can get it in 24 hours.
this is what
Who is the guy that can get my license out
guy.
in 24 hours?
This is guy. We also have
they
our
have
issues
a
about
guy.
NIN and BV not
I mean,
matching.
there was a document I was trying to get. And I was talking to this bank, and the document was stressing both of us in trying to complete the transaction. And then the banker says, I'll give you a number of one guy. He'll get it tomorrow. I'm like, get out of here.
Yeah.
And then the guy, I messaged the guy contacts me. I was like, not like this. Then he gives me the feed, and I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
But I'm like, you know
You need
what?
to get it done.
I need to get this done. So I send him money. Bro, he gets it to me the next afternoon. Now I'm confused because I think this has to be a fake document. Because how did you get it out this quickly? And I'm checking and it's legitimate. 24
It's
hours.
expanded to even get visa appointments.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, somebody
that
told me that they
he's the guy.
I don't know how that happens.
So there's this visa office.
So they
I don't
give
want
you
to
a
mention
date
the
and you
name.
have to fast track
No,
it for.
there's
No,
this visa
so
office.
to get a date is
dates.
difficult
Yeah.
in some cases for somebody.
The
But
guy.
if you know somebody who knows somebody, you're gonna get it.
No, so to get a date,
You can never
this
get it.
agent was telling me that
They can bring it forward.
To get the date. Like the date, the closest date is like a month away. Then if
Or
you want
6
to get
months away, you
closer,
wanna get it closer.
You want closer, you get this amount. Then you've now submitted, right? If you want to get the report out quickly, you know,
that's
you.
another amount.
Sorry, another guy.
So think about it. Think about the level.
So it's crazy
of-
rentrepreneurs. I like that.
So think
word.
about the level of ingenuity that goes into building this rent economy. Just imagine it's channeled to productive enterprise.
It's just.
But it's ingenuity. I mean, listen, when there's petrol scarcity, right? How hard is it for a guy to say, if I just stand outside the petrol station?
Guys,
You know what? You know what? Arnold
Is he
is
a
having
genius?
it? You know what? Arnold is having it? No, you know what? Arnold is having it?
guys, some of them run ecosystem of people that they
You know
sort
what?
out,
Yeah.
they manage, right? They have like, it's not easy
No, Arnold,
for you
it's
to
not
just
easy.
wake up, call somebody, and the person will not call another person, and the next
It's
minute,
not easy.
It's a relationship management.
I have a friend who
Enterprise.
who knows somebody.
I call it the rent economy.
It's serious.
It's a rent
I have a
economy.
friend, I have a friend who knows somebody in Abuja who was told that if you want any problem fixed, whether it's police, whether it's judiciary, whether it's government regulations, that's actually his job to get it fixed.
That's more than a
Yeah.
lobbyist, man. That's
If
not-
there is-
that's
no
something else.
kidding.
That's not a lobbyist anymore.
Any
is it?
except maybe criminal
That's Mr.
issues. Yeah,
Fixer.
but
Mr. Fix, yeah.
almost like what's that movie again?
That lady.
Oh, good
And
Lord.
that guy,
What's that lady's name? I forgot her name.
that Mr.
Yeah.
Fix It,
He fixes everything.
and that Mr. Fix It will ball and will be more wealthy than the
Yeah.
guy who is employing 10,000
Yeah.
people
that's
trying to produce
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I think if you want to go down to the heart of what is messed up about this country, that's the topic you need to
Yeah.
address.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my own. That's my
That's your
cell.
cell.
Yeah, that's my cell. You know,
But
so we don't want
That
Olivia
cell cannot
Popes.
be. That cell cannot
Oliver
be.
Pope.
We don't want
Yeah,
Olivia
thank
Pope.
you,
Olivia
thank
Pope.
you.
No, so
Yeah,
that
yeah,
cell.
Olivia
That
Popes.
cell.
We just want to
thank
just.
goodness.
That
It's bugging
cell.
me, man.
My problem is that cell cannot be placed on this government squarely.
I mean, like
That's
it's culture,
cell.
man.
Judicial
It's
rule
culture.
of law.
I mean,
can
like,
be.
Yeah. So
apart from that, it's in the 8-point agenda. Rule of law is in the 8-point
Yeah,
agenda. So
yeah.
that
They will.
that's why.
They will get to it, but it's a very. And to be honest, it was. I remember then when President Goodluck Jonathan was in office. This was some of the things me and a few people were saying at the time. Focus, again, I was naive at the time, focus on your first 4 years on rule of law. Just making it.
Rule of law doesn't win elections.
Exactly. My brother, it doesn't
cost you.
It does. I'm
which is
telling
why
you.
I said I was naive at the time. But
It
the
doesn't.
idea was make it seamless to do business in Nigeria, make the laws effective so that when foreign businesses are coming in, they know they are protected as they come in through the doors. All those things are multiplier effects for productivity, for investment, all those things. But he didn't do it, and even if he did it, maybe that would have even made it easier for him to lose the elections, which he eventually did. But yeah,
All right. So
it's long.
yeah. So my hold. I have a number of holds that I wrote down here, and I mean this.
He
holds,
wrote it down.
If I use Tunji, I just wrote it down now.
and put us on the spot.
If I use Tunji's, creation, which by the way is not the drinks and bikes.
Sellish
Sellish. Yeah.
Holdish cell.
If I use
Buy
Holdish cell, because they are borderline, really.
Okay,
Yeah, but closer to sell than buy. One would be his politics. I get that maybe he needs that politics to get a lot of his economic reforms going forward. So, but I worry when I see a politics of no opposition, right?
Okay.
Yeah, because I kind of think
I
like
understand. One man-
for an economy
party
to
states.
thrive in the 21st century, you do need to have a level of opposition
Shadow.
and different views, like shadow government.
Yeah, but we don't really have a shadow government system, do we? We never really
Well,
had
shadow
one.
government is only in the UK, but I'm talking about
But
opposition. Exactly.
I do agree with that.
I do disagree with the need for opposition.
Yeah. So
I agree with the need for idea competition.
No, so I understand that opposition sometimes can stifle reforms, especially when they are tough, and you need to push them down the throat of
But it makes
a lot
you
of people.
think.
Yeah,
It makes you think. Though.
but I can't. But I don't think. I think that capitalism, right, and democracy does need to have
Checks and
credible
balances.
opposition.
Yeah.
So let's talk.
And not just for now, but for the future.
Okay.
You want to always have.
Okay, maybe I'm thinking more short
people-
term.
because you
Can
can't
I ask
always
a very
people
simple
always
question?
need a choice. Yeah.
They moving one country,
Yeah.
right, globally,
Yeah.
that has industrialized under a democratic environment.
Boom. Mic drop.
That have industrialized under a
So
democratic
go to the
environment.
industry.
There are so many.
Which
of
one?
them,
Which one?
across Europe?
Not today,
Which
when they
one?
were industrialized.
Which one?
When they were industrialized.
Which one?
Yeah. India is a case in point. India is a case in
But
point.
India is not yet destroyed, but in your mind is Modi democratic.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, even though he's been in power for long, but he's always been elected.
winning elections.
Yeah, he's always
not
been
democracy.
elected. I think so. South Africa.
Because Ashiwaju will win elections. Doesn't make him
Exactly. So look, I don't have a problem. You can win. I don't even mind having.
I'm not saying I want a dictator.
You can have 4 terms. You can have 5 terms. I really don't care.
Yeah.
Right? You can have, because if you have 5 terms and you keep winning under a democracy, then it just shows that people love your policies. People love.
But I sort of I can see
no,
where Sam's
so-
coming
so-
from, because sometimes I feel
yeah.
like
But-
industrialization and democracy,
I always.
because of the change every 4 years. One guy builds something, the other guy destroys it.
I kind of
It's
think.
strong.
See, so that's a different thing. You can allow. You can say, look, maybe a 4-year tenure is too short for you to have the sort of economic development that you want as a young country. You can say you want 6 years, a term. You can say you want 1 full year term, 10-year term. I really don't care. My point is, I just think that for the sort of country we have that is multicultural,
I see your
very
point.
important that you
I
put
see
that
your
out
point.
there,
Yeah.
right? That is multicultural. You do need to have credible opposition.
So what
it also speaks to your point as well.
No.
about, you know,
I
you
love
have
the lopsidedness of the appointment.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Can I just say something, right?
Yeah.
Because there are 2 separate arguments here.
Yeah.
Obviously, because we're a market, Drinks and Mike is an economic program. I always speak from purely an economic
That's
lens.
all we're speaking from.
right? And not
Yeah.
from a societal lens.
Yeah.
Obviously, I
Yeah.
want to be in a democratic environment.
Yeah.
Obviously, I want to be where there's rule of law.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why I would probably rather live in the UK than maybe today I'll live in China. But in the past, I used to say I would rather live in the UK than live in China. Maybe that has changed, right? But what I wanted to establish is what we need in a market economy, right, is a way that the best ideas flow to the top. And that doesn't have to be reflected in a political system that changes, right? What China has been able to achieve, right, is an autocratic system. But China has been able to build a market-based system within an autocratic structure by allowing the regions to compete against each other, and the regions that succeed flow to the top. I'll give you an example. When EV came to the market, when Xi Jinping had this view that China needs to dominate in certain industry, and earmarked EV as one of them, I think at the time they gave over 500 EV licenses, right? The provinces, every province probably has an EV automaker, and then it's a large market. They competed, they killed each other. As at 2022, there was 130 EV. We now know that BYD is at the top, and then they now opened up the market. Or you're at BYD, you're now the Voltron of EV. You can go and compete and conquer the rest of the guys. So what you've built there is a competition of ideas within an autocratic construct.
Battle-ready company.
Economically, that and when you even think about things like even the US, right? Even the UK, when you think about the period where they went through this rapid industrialization process, they were not entirely democratic. We start to talk about democratic ideals
stop,
when we've
stop.
industrialized.
They
right?
were not. It's, this,
They were democratic.
They were not.
They were. America was democratic from day one. America's industrialization started towards the end of the 19th century.
So how do you call it democracy?
In England, they were democratic. So I don't.
Democratic is a system where only farm owners, landowners were allowed to vote.
Yeah.
And landowners were
least you were
All
voting.
black people couldn't vote.
At least you were voting.
That was not democratic.
you were
What
voting.
is no?
But
stop.
you were voting. That's what I'm talking about. You were voting and you had opposition and you had two parties. You were
I
voting.
will not agree.
Whether
Because
you
this
say
is the
women
problem.
shouldn't vote,
This is the
or
problem.
men shouldn't
This is the
vote,
problem I have with.
muscle men.
So by the way,
skinny men like that, it doesn't
for
matter.
clarity of
At least
thought,
you were voting.
For clarity of thought, I am not arguing against democracy.
Yes.
I am arguing about the efficacy
Exactly,
of democracy
because
in
I hear
industrialization.
I hear this Lee Kuan Yew model a lot.
That's why
I hear it a
I'm
lot.
not really
I hear it,
backing it because I sort of
And I
agree with you on
see,
this.
the thing is that I've
Yeah.
been on that side of the argument before.
Yeah.
And I also worry about this Lee Kuan Yew model, and I also don't like
Because you institutional. Imagine you
Yeah.
institutionalize Buhari.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine if he didn't have to leave.
Officially over.
Right? No. So I always like to me. Let's not. So Nigeria is not China. Nigeria is not India. Nigeria is not UK. Nigeria is Nigeria.
It's a fair argument.
Yeah, and let's also remember that.
It is.
Let's also remember that this is not about the top alone. It's not about the presidency.
Absolutely.
I'm talking all the way
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you whatever it is you want at the top, you can also have it at the bottom as well. So that's my own. That's my own.
So here's my
I
own.
think Nigeria
that's
needs to
one of my
unleash regional competition.
No.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yes,
Wait,
yes,
exactly.
yes,
But the thing is this: what I need to explain is that the democracy in the US that provided
The platform for
industrialization
Looks very different.
Looks very different from
what it is today,
what it is today.
100%.
Because
So-
democracy is not
no.
perfect.
So
100%.
one. The second thing is the democracy that has been handed to Nigeria to practice. The question is it the best form of
not fair.
democracy
That's
it's
up
for
for argument. I agree.
development in
Yeah, it's
Nigeria?
not. Nigeria. I
Because
agree.
if you look at Nigeria and what Nigeria is, that democracy is probably hindering that form of democracy.
Yeah.
Because what America's democracy is, if you take democracy today and take it to the US, when the US started industrializing, when the Rockefellers and the rest were building and all of that, that US will have not developed.
So Tunji,
That's a fair argument.
what I mean, I buy your comments and your line of thought.
I love democracy, by the way.
What I don't,
I need to
we all
caveat
do.
that,
We all
right?
do. We all do.
We're having a very narrow argument.
Exactly.
I go and
What
see
I
your
just
Twitter
want to say is that
I support communist.
there are some communists in the house, or autocrats. We're not autocrats or drinks and
I
mics.
always say this. Please go and watch this documentary series, "The Men Who Built America." It's very instructive. It's very instructive to development of any nation.
I was just going to mention that too, in the context of, at the end of the day, right? It really isn't about your style of governance, okay? Not anything can work for you. You can be autocratic, you can be democratic, you can be military. It's always about the vision of the person that's at the top. And how well that person can execute, right? Because give China somebody else, a different leader, they probably won't be where they are today. Give Singapore a different leader with all that power, they probably won't be where they are today. But let's move on. There's no time. There's no time.
What's your
Next
bias?
one.
Please, I want to quickly say that. I want to quickly say this, that it's also often underestimated what Xi Jinping did in China. He inherited a failing China from his predecessor.
He didn't.
No.
He didn't.
So
He didn't. It was a growing China.
He didn't.
It was a
that's
growing
wrong.
China.
He didn't. I actually think what Xi Jinping is doing might, in the long run, harm China. This competition for ideas that exists within the Politburo, Xi Jinping is quietly silencing it. In the long run, that could be a problem.
Yeah.
Because Xi Jinping is a fantastic leader, visionary, But what happens after Xi Jinping
Yeah.
and somebody takes those levers of power
Yeah. That's the point.
that he has concentrated?
You have a moron take over from him, right?
All right, guys. All right.
But in the past, the Politburo was ruthlessly competitive. And this is the problem. So, like, when I listen to Western commentators talk about China, they miss the point. I explain to people that China is more capitalist than the US, and they think I'm nuts, right? When you talk about Adam Smith's perfect competition type of environment,
you
it's
find
more
that
in
there.
China than you find in the US.
Their brand of capitalism is ruthless.
It's a market-based economy, crazily ruthless, that works within an autocratic construct, right? Meanwhile, what you have in the US is basically capital buying political power.
Yeah.
And almost monopolistic, oligopolistic capitalist behavior.
So the more money you have, the better it is.
Okay.
All right, guys. So I mean, you can see how you can see how hot
believe what we just did.
All right, so my next hold, this won't be as controversial as the other one. My next hold is I had thought that by now, well, maybe very soon we would hear, maybe very soon, but I had thought that by now we would see some kind of scorecard of some ministers. I think there are some that have
performance
underperformed.
KPI.
That probably need to go. Probably need fresh hands, or maybe something around. Look, there are certain ministries that need to do better. So I think that would be where I'm also kind of holdish. I had expected the most, but it's a hold because maybe there's still time for that. Okay. Let's wait for June 12 and see what happens. But in terms of my buy, I think for me, my buy, to be specific, as much as we would like to talk about some of the reforms, but my buys are around certain laws, even though I said, rule of law was a problem, but there's certain acts that we have seen that I think is very critical to the sort of economy or the sort of economic growth that we're all looking for. A lot lies on, of course, on how some of these things are executed or implemented. So the Student Loan Act, I think, is fantastic. There's the minimum wage one as well. I don't know if that happened under here. Yeah, the minimum wage. Yeah. I think there is the one that the tax reform bill that is currently being worked on. I think that is solid. There are also a lot of interesting ideas, which I guess we'll talk to at some point. I like what I'm seeing around consumer credit. There is a whole lot of underground build up happening that a lot of people may not, be aware of, which also speaks to Tunji's point around maybe they're not making credit a lot of noise.
Credit guarantee.
The Electricity Act is perhaps one of the most forward-thinking acts that you would find anywhere in Africa. As much as we have major problems here, if you speak to, I haven't seen any foreign investor that I've spoken to that haven't said anything good, that have said anything bad about that act. And
what act is that?
The Electricity. The Electricity Act as well. That is another solid one. So I kind of feel...
Wait, I've not read the act. Could you tell me if the act has anything to do with the whole law around, if you produce domestically like IPPs and the threshold to put it into national grid? Does it have anything to do with that?
It's all embedded in the act, but I guess
has the act been passed? Sorry, I'm behind.
Yes.
I'm behind.
Yeah, because for me, I'm even wondering. I think for the regular person,
like independent generation capacity from 1 megawatt.
So the key tenets of that act is now giving states the power to also regulate.
But Buhari passed that
electricity. Wasn't it?
Buhari passed that act, and
he was signed on the.
Tinubu. I think electricity was passed by Buhari.
No.
February 2023. I think.
No.
We
can quickly check that.
I think Buhari passed that act.
I found something interesting about parts of Europe and electricity, especially the fact that there are some parts of the year where electricity has oversupply, where and there's some times where it has undersupply, where the regions then buy electricity from
9th of June
homeowners.
2023.
homeowners.
So
Just as
it was
then
passed under
overproduced.
Buhari and then
Yeah,
signed by
signed under-
Ashiwaju.
So for me, electricity for us will always be something I
Yeah.
think is disappointing. So when I haven't read the act, so forgive
Yeah.
my
No, you
ignorance
should-
lack of
you
knowledge.
should-
But
you
for
should
me, it's
read
just like okay. I always tell this story. I was born in Nigeria. I was born in Port Harcourt. I left when I was 12 or 13 years old. Issues with electricity.
Wait,
Nepa.
you left Nigeria because of electricity?
No, I'm just saying.
the issues
Nepa was
there
a
was
problem.
Nepa.
I
And then
came
you
back
came
in
back and it's
2023.
still Nepa.
Nepa. So for me,
Oh,
it's
God.
I don't even see. I need to see something, and I'm speaking very
So the
plainly
only-
and very simply.
only-
yeah,
so-
I
and
have
I'm
a joke.
like,
So I think when my son first came to Nigeria, we were in the house, and then the light went off, and he said, "Daddy, I'm blind."
listen, I was watching. There's this thing on Instagram. There's this thing on Instagram, right? Where this girl was streaming. There's this thing on Instagram. This girl was streaming for 3 years. For 3 years live, right?
The Pekin I've never seen.
There's this thing on
Shot the
Instagram where
Pekin.
this girl was streaming for 3 years live. I don't know the streamer's name. He saw her and he was like, wow, you've been streaming live for 3 years. And my first thought was like, wow, Nepa didn't take live for 3 years. You know, it's like, we're so traumatized. And now if there's electricity for 10 hours, I'm always like, oh, Nepa, you've tried. And as I was so used to just the
What we
behavior of this.
really need is a decentralization of that power
Maybe I'm
system
blind.
where there can be local
That
producers.
is exactly
local
what you
producers
have
to
in
the
that
point.
act.
Local producers to the point where, you know, for instance, if I live in an estate, we can invest in power production to the point where we can now start selling to our neighbors if for some reason
The
we have
challenge I
excess
have
production.
with that, electricity is one industry that scale economics works brilliantly in. Right. So the amount of deadweight loss you will have by having very decentralized electricity systems is going to create inefficiency in the economy.
So I'm going to...
Obviously, having inefficient power is better than having no power.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about it in terms of
Scale.
right? Electricity, the scale economics in electricity
my
is
worry is
impressive.
the amount of money is going to require. Because again, let's
How much
really-
money have we already
chill,
pumped into
chill,
this?
Chill,
I don't know, man.
So
This-
here's
this-
the thing, and
the
it has not worked.
The problem
has
is
not
not
worked,
that.
right?
The problem
I think
is
under the act, Lagos
problem
will
is-
have electricity.
So let me
problem is that we
it has
can't
not
fix
worked.
the
this is one
electricity.
area that this is one sector that I have a little bit of competence in, and one of these days I think we're going to invite somebody in that
Please.
sector to come
Yeah.
and help break things down for us on Drinks and Mics. But to Tunji's point, and it might not be a very popular opinion, the way the electricity sector is constructed today, you
this
probably
is Daddy of Blind
need
Stories.
not of you probably need
Yeah.
you probably need not of $20 billion to try and create the sort of scale that you're looking for that will deliver
24 hours, 24
no, not even. I always tell people there's 24 power supply. Go and buy a generator. You get it for 24. The problem is the problem is
at
cost.
the unit cost.
Yes,
that makes sense.
The problem is the cost. There's 24-hour power. I have 24-hour power in my house, but I know how much I pay to get it. So it's the cost that's the problem. So
I agree with you.
now, but here's the kicker. Even if you bring in $20 billion, it's still not going to solve the problem. Because let's think about it. You decide to invest $10 billion in transmission. Okay, so what about generation? Do they have that same level of investment capacity? Can they attract that level? Because everybody has to be investing around the same time. Apart from that, you need to be sure that the sort of
distributors.
equipment that they are getting fits very well.
So I have
something that's been going on for 40 years. We still can't.
I think you need what I call parallel synchronicity. Nigeria has so far in its post-independence life have not demonstrated the capacity to parallelly synchronize.
Even water. That's what I call the borehole mentality. So the borehole mentality is that because we can't have a centralized water system in this country, which is his point.
Yeah.
You can't have it. What happens?
Wow.
Everybody builds a borehole.
Borehole, yeah.
Figure out
Let me
around
even
it.
tell you something.
Because the
Your own
cost of
government.
having that now, it's going to be more expensive than
what's the
having
solution, though?
But then
I need to at some point think what's
two
the
stories.
the water has
solution?
passed already.
So
it's gotta be. Sorry, Tunji. It's all. That's why I told you that you have to look at that act, and it's whether you're gonna have investors come in and execute. What is likely going to work?
Pensions, up to 20%.
What is likely going to work? And what we're seeing,
It's about that.
it's not. They can't even solve. What's going to happen is you would see pockets of decentralization start to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
And what I think might lead to your point of having cheaper electricity is competition. If there are pockets of decentralization happening and there's a lot, and then innovation becomes better, technology becomes better, right? Over time, then you can then start to have cheaper power.
Let me tell you.
Remember, enter one chance.
Let me tell you a
Name
story.
me one industry in Nigeria where competition has led to lower prices.
No. Okay. Let me say this. Let me say this. Telecoms. Yeah. Let me say this about
that's fair.
Let me say this about my estate.
Fintech. Okay.
So my estate works with a blend of electricity.
But remember, telecoms gave you national scale.
That's what I'm saying.
It's the same thing
but
now.
It was almost decentralized at the start.
And
They had to
immediately.
create something. If they had rode on the Nitel infrastructure that they had, don't be where they are now.
Yeah, exactly.
Remember at the start,
Exactly. Everybody had to build their own
mast.
But remember, Lagos didn't have a telecom license. Ogun State didn't have a telecom license.
No. But they had to roll out
they had a mandate to
independently.
give you
Electricity is
national
different. Electricity is different
coverage.
because apologies, Tunji, you're going to make a point.
I don't know the answer to this question. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Electricity is different because now what can happen is that Lagos State as a state can say, okay, you know what? There are transmission issues that is affecting power supply in Lagos State and want to industrialize Lagos State. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to get a private power company, power generator, come to Alimosho, build a power plant. We're going to give you a license. We're speaking to Ikeja Electric. Ikeja Electric, let them use your distribution lines. They're going to give you distribution and use of service. It's called DUS. But you're also mandated to meter all those customers so that the cash flow is very well measured, right?
Yeah.
Then you've basically effectively cut off transmission, right? Transmission capacity. And then the generator sits somewhere in Alimosho and is selling to everybody. Now, it's likely going to be expensive, which is likely to be the first problem. Then Lagos State government can say on its own, you know what? Alimosho gives us the most votes. So we will subsidize power in Alimosho for X number of period, or probably subsidize power to manufacturing or whatever. And then people in Alimosho start to get 24/7 hour. And then you come to Sulere and say, okay, Sulere, same thing. We get someone, we give you a license, you drop a generator plant here, and blah, 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 and then 2-4 power. Eco-Atlantic. I think that's the part and that's what you're likely going to see across.
That is the part we are on. Yeah. That is what is likely going to happen. I've always been of the view that within the next 5 to 10 years, Lagos will solve the power problem because of the capacity that Lagos have to solve those problems.
No, but Lagos
have that conversation about generating capacity to a private investor in Bornu and see what they will say to you.
Is that putting it into the national grid issue that always caps most of those IPPs? So, for instance, my estate uses a blended system with IPP generator and I was about to say NEPA,
Eco Disco.
Eco Disco. So between that, we have some level of, but the IPP, which has now packed up for whatever reason, used to, I used to always think my estate was big. But in the grand scheme of things, my estate really means nothing to this IPP. They were, in fact, the only reason why we were able to connect them is because we are beside a very big estate, right? So they just connected us and, we just got light. Now, the context for me with those kind of situations is like estates like mine on that IPP's grid are inconsequential. It means that the IPP has enough capacity to be able to carry a lot of people, right? I think they now, in trying to gather more revenue, they started to expand to the point where they overburdened the system and the system shut down and they've not been able to sort it out. My thing is, I could clearly see the trajectory with those kind of IPPs. Now, what my estate would benefit from in that situation is if there were 3 IPPs in that same in space, right? When I mean 3 IPPs, in the sense that if your IPP goes off, we just switch off to yours. If yours goes off, we switch off to his, right? In that context, you can't overbill me.
Power just doesn't work like that.
No, I know it doesn't work like that, but what we need to create is give the liberalization.
In the UK, it does.
My point is, in Germany,
here's
it
what
does.
works. No. What happens in the UK that you don't know is there is a single generator, and then you can have different retail distributors. Yeah, that's what happens. So you have any retail.
I need to say this. Ugo Dre's concept of power is that the generators should be here and still pass it to the central distribution.
No, that's not what he's advocating.
No,
that's not what I was the one that's saying that is the most efficient. I'm not saying that
remember
will work
that
in Nigeria.
That's why you need to understand how that power functions, and it's the same. So you have wholesale, you have retail.
Retail, yeah.
The wholesale is the transmission, which is the grid.
Yeah.
But you still have the retail, which is the one that comes to your distribution
Yeah.
here. So to build new distribution capacity is expensive. So there's no point building a new distribution capacity where one exists already. The reason why that one is not working is because generation is not coming.
No, but we have more. No. But we have more generation capacity than we have distribution. The transmission lines just cannot distribute it.
Yes, you do have. You do exactly. That's the point. So you have more generation capacity. You have very limited
Distribution capacity.
transmission capacity. But you also have limited distribution capacity as well, by the way. But you have enough distribution capacity that can deliver 24/7 power in most parts of
By the
Nigeria.
way, I need to say this. So I need to say this.
Yes, let me give you one start. I'm not trying to make this a power drinks and mics, but one thing a lot of people don't realize, What a lot of people don't realize is that, you see, Nigeria is not South Africa.
Okay.
So Nigeria,
in what sense?
Good. So Nigeria,
because I'm like, okay,
Nigeria doesn't need 10,000 megawatts for you to get 24/7
consumption.
power. Yeah, because South Africa
low.
has a lot of coal mines. So South Africa
it
needs 25,
power,
30,000. So to solve this problem, in fact, the generation capacity we have can solve this problem if they can distribute better.
You make it sound so simple because I thought it was generation capacity that was the problem.
So I guess I'm frustrated about the amount of money that we've spent as a country on petrol subsidy. If only we spent it on electricity subsidy. Because firstly, electricity, you can't store it.
Had electricity subsidy for decades.
The point is, no. It's an inefficient subsidy. So, Ugo,
you can say that.
I'm always very nervous around, and I'm a capitalist and I'm a market person. But one of the things I'm afraid of is we need to build competitive industries. And one of the ways you can build competitive industries is to have cheap power.
I agree.
Right. So how do we, and this pathway that we are following, market reflective, decentralized. In my head, I'm just seeing cost. So are we then going to have electricity that is expensive that makes your industrialization journey harder?
You know what's funny? Despite the sort of band A tariff we have, we still have one of the cheapest electricity prices globally. Shocking, right?
Yeah, but this
we gotta go on, guys. We gotta go on. We gotta go on.
No, it's fine. Let's move to the next one. But this is one of your buys. So my buy,
for me, it's a shocking buy. My buy,
it's a good buy. It's a good buy.
My buy is not. My buy is the laws
or the act
that's been written out, that's been signed, that I think should usher in economic prosperity if they are implemented.
He's trying to look good.
So
he didn't allow us research. He went to go and research.
No, I didn't research. I didn't research that.
I don't know.
I always argue.
I didn't mention.
I
didn't talk about the SEC Act, for example. That's a good one.
Yeah, that's
a number of them. Yeah.
So
the SEC have been
there are foundational changes that this administration is laying.
Yeah.
Right. Whether it becomes, it leads to economic growth and productivity.
Yeah, whether because the game changer is a different thing.
Right. It's and the execution of those things.
Exactly.
It's but like I think there's a lot of thoughtfulness in passing laws, right, for this government, which I would argue that we haven't had in a while. And I think Ashiwaju being the quote unquote godfather that he is able to get this thing through Congress without the normal song and dance that you normally find from opposing political interests, right?
Which is why you don't want opposition.
And I need so I need to say this. I need to say this.
I'm not advocating for one party state.
I mean, it is slowly becoming a one-party state.
I need to say this because I do feel it does sound like I am pro Tinubu.
You are.
No,
You're pro Tinubu,
pro Trump.
You're pro Trump.
Make Nigeria great again.
I am not.
Who is asking? Why are you worried about that?
Why
Is it conscious?
I don't think
Is it conscious breaking you?
I need to.
It's just the comment section.
Why did you have to
comment section
why you trying to explain this? Like nobody said you right.
No. I know how it can sound. It can come across. I am pro certain things, and those.
Okay, so you're not pro Tinubu, you're against Tinubu.
No. So if you notice, so what it is that we're cooking soup, right? All the ingredients are there. If you hear me, I'm always still like, this guy's not sold us. He has not really sold us. So the ingredients are not complete, but I can see that the tomatoes is inside, right? The meat is inside, but the shaki and the pomo, they've not entered, So
but he holds and sell that most of the people in this table.
Next topic.